Had no need to fight tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in
Today we will present about coherence and truth. What is true? True is defined as the quality or state being true. What does it mean? Truth is the property of being in accord with fact. In the simple word, truth is the aim of belief. Truth is typically ascribed to the things that aim to represent reality or otherwise correspond to it, such as belief, proposition, and declarative sentences. Therefore, truth is opposite of falsehood. Did you know truth is one of the central subjects in philosophy? It is origin to ancient Greek philosophers such as Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Lots of issues in philosophy relate to truth, either by relying on this about truth or implying this about truth. Therefore, truth has been a topic of discussion including philosophy, art, theology, and science in its own right for 1,000 years. A fact is something that is indisputable, beyond theory, and proven occur in the past. It also proven through calculation and experience, and it based on empirical research and quantifiable measure. For example, the fact is strawberry is red and elephant is grey, and we cannot deny about it because it is beyond theory. Firstly, truth is entirely different with facts. It may include fact, but it can also include belief. Secondly, people will accept things as true because they fall closer to their comfort zone or reflect their preconceived notions of reality. Now, we will move to theories of truth. I bet all of you want to know example of truth. So, in this theory, you will know what is exactly true. So, theory of truth are divided into three: correspondence theory, coherent theory, and pragmatic theory. But in this chapter, we only focus to coherent theory. Coherence are defined as the quality or state of coherence and systematic or logical connection or consistency. What is the meaning with coherent theory? Coherent theory is the truth of any proposition consists in its coherence with some specified set of propositions. It means one proposition must have a connection with another one proposition. The coherent relation is simply consistency. Say that a proposition coheres with a specified set of propositions is to say that the proposition is consistent with the set. This is mean one proposition that connects with another proposition must have consistency, which is intercorrelations. Lastly, different variety of theory also give various account of the set of proposition with which true proposition cohere.
The pen is on the ground. You can say, oh, well, I heard the pen hitting the ground, and the person sitting at the desk next to me looked up and heard that as well. And I can sense that the pen's no longer where I thought I left it. So since all of these beliefs cohere with one another, you could say that the pen is on the ground is true. Again, I know that sounds a little bizarre, but here's a slightly better example. So for instance, we say that it's the case that there are black holes out in space. We can't see black holes directly, but the idea of their existence, it coheres with other cosmological ideas that we have, right? So we know that matter drawn into the center of a spiral heats up, and at certain temperatures, this is going to show on X-rays. And these X-rays can be seen by space telescopes. So we theorize that there are these things called black holes, and that their existence is real. That the sentence, "there are black holes," is true, right? But it's true in a coherence sense of truth, as opposed to correspondence sense of truth.
So, from the theory, we know that truth is correspondent with the facts, and the fact was secure only if we could describe it in indicator of truth, meaning by through the conceptual and theoretical system. So, when the process justification is done, theoretical and conceptual must be related to the theory, and it will be defined as the truth.
Hi everyone, today I will be explaining about theoretical claims and observational claims. Theoretical claims is the claims made based on theory, while observational claims is the claim made based on observation. But first, what is theory? Theories are explanations of a natural or social behavior, event or phenomenon. In a simple words, theory should be able to explain why things happen rather than just a description or prediction. Theory also needs to be testable, where we can tell whether the theory is correct or wrong. It requires evidence and needs to work every single time it's being used. For example, Einstein's theory of relativity. This theory needs to work every single time without exception. Theory is also a result of reflection. Let's take an example of Einstein's theory that I mentioned before. It is a result of reflection of how space and time are linked for objects that are moving at a consistent speed in a straight line. Einstein reflected on how space and time work and came up with the theory of relativity, which explains why theory is said to be as a result of reflection. Last but not least, theory is also the product of activity of theorizing and thinking. Classification of theory. There are two types of classification of theory, which are grand theory and middle-range theory. Grand theory is based on abstract ideas, which is something that is not a material object or is general and not based on specific examples. It is a concept that are real, but not considered as a material or object such as freedom. Let me give you a situation to explain about grand theory. Student A prefer red color hat while student B prefer a blue color hat. These preferences is based on abstract taste of human beings, not because of other factors such as color blindness. Second is middle-range theory. Middle-range theory is the evolution from grand theory. It is less abstract and more detailed. It also involves specific scientific finding and applied to a very specific problem. For example, the theory of becoming a mother by Raymond Mercier. The scientific finding of this theory is a woman establishes motherly identity as she becomes a mother through her commitment. This motherly identity will be applied on motherhood process. There are four types of theoretical claims. The first two is category claim and event claim. Category claim take place when we categorize something into its suitable category. For example, plants are living things, and we need evidence to support this claim. There are two types of evidence, the supporting evidence and the disconfirming evidence. The supporting evidence would be plants share the characteristic of living thing, while the disconfirming evidence, plants lack some characteristics of living thing. Event claim is the claim that take place when some event happened. For example, this plant died. Supporting evidence is plants has turned brown and not growing. And disconfirming evidence, plants start to show characteristic of living. The other two claim is causal claim and explanatory claim. Causal claim is the claim where we explain the causes of how things happen. For example, plants died because of inadequate sunlight. The supporting evidence to support that statement is plants need sunlight to keep on living, while the disconfirming evidence is some group of plants remain alive even if it is not exposed to sunlight. Next is explanatory claim. The example of explanatory claim is multivariable process of photosynthesis. The supporting evidence is sunlight is needed in photosynthesis, while the disconfirming evidence is dark photosynthesis where it is light independent. Plants does not need sunlight to operate dark photosynthesis. Now we move to observation. What is observation? Observation consists of receiving knowledge of the outside world through our senses, which are hearing, smelling, tasting, seeing, and touching. Observation also includes recording information using scientific tools and instruments. What are the importance of observation? Observation is essential in science. It is used to collect and record data which enables people to construct and then test hypotheses and theories. It is also caused by a particular sensation as mentioned before, and it helps in proving theories. There are similarities between theoretical and observational. The first one is claims is based on relation to other claims, belief, and theories, which mean both theoretical and observational claims are correlated to one another to support theory. And the second one is the description is secured by its fit into the current conceptual network. Current conceptual means the flexibility of the descriptiveness to our current situation. It must have the capability to explain the current situation. For example, theory of gravity. The description is flexible to our current situation where we knew that gravity does exist and it has the capability to explain the current situation, such as why does the moon does not fall.
Hermeneutic generally refers to the text interpretation, especially in the fields of religion and law. There are 7 steps of doing research with hermeneutics approach. First, starting with concept map. Second, the central role of the interviewee. Third, how to select interviewees. Fourth, the roles of researcher and interviewer. Fifth, how to conduct a hermeneutic interview. Sixth, how to analyze and interpret a hermeneutic interview. And the last is criticism of hermeneutics approach. There are 3 things that should have in the concept map. First, build data collection technique interview guide, clarify theoretical framework, and interpret and analyze data and interview transcript. What is the central role of the interviewees? First, potentially, which everything the interviewee says is important and worth analyzing. Next, expressions, means of expression should be deeply analyzed. Non-directive technique, which is more advisable as they are flexible and adaptable. Highly skilled, which is researcher or interviewer has to be highly skilled and they should have hermeneutic sensitivity and hermeneutic skill. So how to select interviewees? There are 3 non-probability sampling, which is first, convenience sampling, second, judgmental or purposive sampling, and snowball sampling. Covariance sampling is interviewees are chosen based on their relative ease of access. Judgmental sampling is researchers chooses interviewees based on who they think will be appropriate for study. Snowball sampling is existing interviewees help researchers in recruiting other interviewees from among their acquaintances. What is the role of interviewer or researcher? First, play a magnetic role. Second, friendly. Third, well experienced. And fourth, good listener. Interviewers should minimize interruptions but effective interventions. It is important to ensure the interviews comfortable during interview season. The researcher should be skilled, motivated, creative, and humanity sensitivity. Interviewers should be really listen to the interviewees in order to get the actual information. This is because listening is known as psychological art. A researcher also should have a committed, has flexible interview guide, must transcribe all the information, and pay attention to both verbal and nonverbal communication. What is hermeneutic sensitivity? Hermeneutic sensitivity is a skill that all researchers should have. First, to be aware of your own limitations. Second, ethical sensitivity, which is listened as a constitutive element of every dialogue, helping the others to reach and express their inner knowledge by questioning and answering. How to conduct hermeneutic interviews? Sufficient to have a simple and flexible guideline. Avoid direct questions. Avoid dichotomous questions such as yes or no. Record interview seasons. Interviewer must never express authoritative opinion. Interviewee should be allowed to take a break. Interviewer could give opinions and evaluation at the end of interview season. Never attempt to prolong an interview. How to interpret and analyze hermeneutic interview. First, discover potentialities and limitations of research. Second, refine interpretation. And the last, understand better the interviewee's point of view. Criticism of hermeneutics approach. First, generalization is not possible. It is a controversial subject even for the quantitative research. Interpretative interventions of the researcher, every action knowing as an act of interpretation. The empirical basis is not available. Every researcher should expose the analysis and interpretation procedure used. Lastly, truthfulness of narrations is interviewees may say things that we know that are incorrect. Main goals of hermeneutic approach is to explore the life world of individual by common sense, prejudice, and beliefs. All the beliefs and perceptions and also opinions could shape interviewee's life world and influences his behavior.
Do you know what is evidence? Evidence is something that can be used to prove something. For example, testimony. Testimony means a formal statement saying that something is true, especially when a witness makes in a court of law. There are two types of evidence, which are subjective evidence and objective evidence. Let's look at subjective evidence first. Subjective evidence is evidence that cannot be evaluated. In fact, we have two choices: to accept what somebody says or reject it. Subjective evidence, on the other hand, is evidence that is in the form of an opinion or self-report, which means it cannot be independently examined, evaluated, or verified, but it must be either accepted or rejected. It also emphasized by personal feeling, thought, judgment, and opinion. For example, this is Peter. Every night, Peter is having a nightmare. So he goes to his doctor and says, "I keep having this horrible nightmare." The doctor must decide whether to believe or reject what Peter told him. This is because there is no compelling evidence to back up what he said. The evidence for the existence of Peter's nightmare is subjective evidence. Now we look at the second type of evidence, which is objective evidence. Objective evidence is information or theory that can be proven by analysis, measurement, observation, or doing research. In other words, objective evidence is evidence that can be examined, evaluated, and verified by ourselves. Objective evidence also is an independent evidence, which means it cannot be manipulated by other things like our feeling, thought, or opinion, but it should be emphasized based on facts and figures that can be proven. Now we look at the example of objective evidence. This example is a continuation of the previous example. To prove that Peter had a nightmare, the doctor videos him while he sleeps. Then, the doctor examined the recording the next day. The video footage shows Peter tossing and turning in his sleep, then screaming. The doctor can see that Peter wakes up in the night sweating profusely and clearly scared. Now, the doctor must believe Peter because the evidence is objective. In other words, there is a proof that shows Peter has a nightmare. To more understand on this topic, let's look at this picture. This picture shows there are two patients that have terrible pain in their back. The doctor on the right has objective evidence that the patient has a terrible pain in his back. This is because he can see that the knife at the back of the patient as a proof that he is in pain. While the doctor on the left, however, have subjective evidence. This is because there is no evidence to prove the patient has pain in his back. now we are already knows what's the meaning of objective evidence and subjective evidence. So after this, we will look at the characteristic of objective evidence.
Characteristic of objective evidence. First, first-hand. Second, unbiased. Third, factual. Fourth, traceable. First, first-hand evidence. First-hand evidence coming from the original sources, which means it's coming directly from you or someone actually experiencing or seeing something. For example, when you get information from someone who saw something happen or heard something, it's called as first-hand evidence. Same like the situation, interviewing a witness to an accident give a police officer a first-hand evidence what exactly happened. Second, unbiased evidence. Unbiased evidence should be gathered in a completely neutral way. It is also called as not biased, prejudiced, fair, or impartial. In other words, it is not affected or influenced by someone's emotions or feelings. As example, the evidence gathered by the lawyer must be unbiased. It should not influence by the emotion or feelings. Second example from the science experiment. It is about litmus paper. Let's see the video first. Let's go! From the video, it shows that the blue litmus paper remained unchanged, but the red litmus paper changed to the blue color when the sodium hydroxide dropped to the litmus paper. So it's obviously showed this experiment is unbiased. This experiment does not clouded by emotion or feelings to it. Third, traceable evidence. For your information, the word traceable is just the adjective form of the common verb trace, meaning to find. So, if you describe something as traceable, that just means it can be detected and also can be used in the sense of something that can be tracked. First example, a poison can be discovered in the body of murder victim. It is one of traceable evidence. Second, radiometric dating. In general, radiometric dating is a technique used to date materials such as rocks and carbon. My friends will explain more in an just like. Fourth, factual evidence. Factual evidence can be proven, repeated, and observed. Something factual must be real. In other definition, factual is true or concerned with actual details or information rather than ideas or feelings about it. The example of factual evidence is Earth is the fourth planet in our solar system. So, to prove that Earth is fourth planet, I have searched some evidence. Based on my previous research, it is proven that from this picture, it shows that our Earth is in the fourth position in our solar system. So, it is true that this example is factual evidence because it can be proven. Second example of factual evidence is ocean water is salty. To prove that ocean water is salty, let's see my explanation and the video in the next slide.
Why is ocean water salty? Several natural processes make ocean water salty. For example, when it rains, the water droplets react with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and form carbonic acid, making rainwater slightly acidic. This acidic rainwater reacts with minerals present in the rocks and forms new minerals and salts. These minerals and salts are then carried by flowing water to the oceans, thus making the ocean water salty.
So, from this video, it shows that certain process happened, and it turned out that our ocean water stays salty. And from other people's experience, they also say ocean water tastes salty. So it is true, this example is factual evidence because it is proven. Do you know about scientific evidence? Let me explain to you in the next slide. Scientific evidence is information gathered from scientific research. In fact, it requires a lot of time and patience to conduct. But this research needs to have in common to make it possible for us to accept it as evidence. Meaning that scientific evidence can be either from literature, which means you find it from other research papers, or from your own results of experimentation. Okay, let's say you want to prove Earth is in a rounded shape. You need to find the scientific evidence from the previous study and also from your own research, which means based on your result and also from your observation. Now, let's look at the example of objective evidence.
Assalamualaikum and hello everyone. Ilya will continue our presentation on objective evidence example, which is fossil. What is fossil? The definition of fossil is the preserved remains or imprint in a rock of a plant or animal. How fossils form? Ilya will use common example, which is a dinosaur fossil. The dinosaur will die and will go through decomposition process, which the soft part decompose first and hard part will decompose later. This decomposition process will take a long time, especially the hard parts. The example of hard parts are teeth, bones, and shell. Let's move to the fossil type. Ilya would like to share 3 types of fossil, which are whole body fossil, trace fossil, and organism in amber. Whole body fossil, we can see the gigantic dinosaur fossil in petroscience. Even though it is not real, but it describes each of the bones and structure of the dinosaur. Trace fossil can be footprint, tracks, or dung. Amber fossil are the remains of ancient organisms trapped in amber, tree resin which has hardened through a process called polymerization. If the tree resin happen to harden in the right environment, it can endure for hundreds or thousands of years, creating a valuable record of organisms which lived in the past. Next, what methods can be used to determine fossil age? Ilya will share 2 types of method, but let's look at the first one, which is stratigraphy. Stratigraphy is the study how deeply a fossil buried underground layers of rock are formed over millions of years, which new layers are formed on top of old layers. As you can see the short video down below, it shows the process of layers formed and the fossil buried among the layers. The way for the paleontologist to get the fossil age is to see which layer of rock it was in when it found. The deeper the fossil, the older it is. Second method is radiometric dating or radioisotope dating, which is the best way to find the fossil age. But the fossil must be made out of certain kinds of rock. For example, uranium-235. It decays very slowly over time. For the uranium-235 turn to lead-207, it requires 700 million years to turn. This rate of its changes called half-life. Let's see. When the paleontologists found a new fossil, they will look carefully to see whether the uranium-235 in the fossil is turning into lead-207. If it's halfway change or mostly change or only starting to change, it will give a good idea of its age. Usually, paleontologists will guess its range or span of time. For example, volcano erupted 70 million years ago and spread a new layer of volcanic rock over the earth. Then imagine a dinosaur lived and died right on top of this layer. It was buried underground and became a fossil. After 10 million years, the volcano blew a new layer of rock on top of the fossil. Thus, paleontologists can guess the dinosaur was between 70 and 60 million years old. However, this uranium-235 has long period to decay, and that's why scientists prefer to use carbon-14 to determine the fossil age, because every 5,730 years on average, about half of the carbon-14 will decay into nitrogen. It is much shorter period to decay. Let's say if the fossil found at the first layer, which first life, it has 50% of carbon-14 and the age will be 5,730 years. If the fossil found at the second layer, which is second life, the age will be 11,460 years, which 2 times 5,730. If it found at the third layer, which the age will be 7,190. By multiply 3 with 5,730 years. This is how the calculation using carbon-14 to determine the fossil age.
Like buried treasure, they lie hidden from sight. Echoes of an ancient past, they whisper secrets and tell tales once lost to time. Fossils are remnants or impressions of ancient organisms that are naturally preserved in stone. While there are hundreds of fossil types, they are often grouped into two major categories: body fossils, which are the preserved remains of plants and animals, and trace fossils, which are records of an animal's behavior, such as footprints. Together, they form the fossil record, a primary account that tells the story of life on Earth through stone. One special case involves trapping organisms, oftentimes insects, in amber. This process begins when an organism is covered in tree sap. The sap, or resin, forms a protective seal around the entrapped organism. Over time, the soft resin hardens and turns into amber, with the organism suspended within. This process creates a biologically inert tomb for the organism, allowing its soft tissues to be remarkably preserved. When conditions are right, fossilization can preserve crucial information about an organism. Permineralized wood often contains enough information to identify its tree genus and sometimes its species. Insects encased in amber have been so well preserved that their genetic material was extracted and partially sequenced. And footprints left behind by ancient hominins help paint a picture of what life was like for early human ancestors millions of years ago. With every fossil uncovered, the planet's ancient past becomes clearer, helping shape our understanding of our world today.